Kelly does whatever I tell her to, because I raised her that way. It was early evening in a hotel room. The sound leaking from my smartphone speaker was my biological mother Susan's shrill laughter. At that very moment, I was in the middle of a high-stakes business trip for a major American IT company, serving as a senior project manager with the company's future on the line. Yet, despite being separated by the Atlantic Ocean, my consciousness had flown thousands of miles away, to my sanctuary, a quiet residential neighborhood in California. On the smartphone in my hand, a crystal-clear 4K live feed was playing. It showed the living room of the brand-new house I had finally managed to buy after more than a decade of backbreaking work. Inside the frame, the light clinking of crystal glasses echoed as more than 10 unfamiliar men and women lounged deeply into my custom-made velvet sofa, brazenly drinking the limited edition vintage wine I had bought as a reward for myself. At the center of it all, acting like the queen of a kingdom, was my mother. And beside her, giving her friends a tour of my state-of-the-art kitchen as if it were her own property, was my brother Daniel's wife, Tiffany. "This house is basically something I bought for Kelly," my mother bragged shamelessly to her friends. "She's never once disobeyed me when I told her, 'Give it to your brother,' ever since she was little." This time was no different. All I had to do was say a word, and she handed over the keys. Rebellion isn't even a concept in her dictionary. The moment I heard that, the last remaining shard of ice in my heart, the thing called affection for family, shattered with an audible crack. I had lived my entire childhood in Daniel's shadow. No matter how good my grades were, no matter how many promotions I earned, my mother's response was always the same. "Don't hurt your brother's pride. Your brother is sensitive. You need to support him." Those words bound me like a curse. I truly believed that meeting those expectations was the only way I might someday be acknowledged by her. I lived my life suppressing myself, a walking embodiment of self-sacrifice. But what they were doing on that screen went far beyond mere familial entitlement. This was an insult to my very life. With trembling hands, I confirmed that my phone's recording function was running. I had 15 hidden cameras installed throughout the house. They were my insurance. A response to the instinctive unease I had felt 2 weeks before this trip, when my mother had persistently insisted, "Just in case, leave me a spare key. That's the family rule." That's right. I've done whatever you said. Until now. Alone in the dark hotel room, I smiled quietly. On the other side of the screen, Tiffany was leading several friends toward my bedroom. "Hey, look. Isn't the master bedroom amazing? Actually, we're planning to move in here as a family next month. Kelly's single after all. She doesn't need such a big house. Her mother is going to talk her into it." What spilled from Tiffany's mouth was an audacious plan beyond anything I had imagined. She leaned casually against my custom kitchen counter, laughing as if she were the true owner of the house. In her hand was an antique crystal glass I had fallen in love with and bought in London. Can you believe it? Kelly had them build 3 guest rooms even though she lives alone. Talk about not knowing her place. We have 2 kids who are growing fast, and Daniel keeps complaining he can't focus on work in that tiny apartment. So we talked it over with his mother and decided this house should obviously be passed on to our family. That's the right solution. One of the friends voiced the obvious question. "But what does Kelly say? She built this house herself, didn't she?" From the sofa, my mother waved her hand dismissively. "I'll tell her we can trade it for Daniel's apartment. She's single and lives for her job, right? She probably doesn't even have time to clean a place this big. Daniel's apartment is more than spacious enough for one person. Honestly, for her future, an easy-to-manage apartment is a win-win. She doesn't have the right to refuse." Just as she said, the mother I remembered had always put Daniel first, while I remained in the background. When Daniel dropped out of college, she blamed me. "You were too capable. You crushed your brother's confidence." When he drifted without a steady job, she said, "He's just chasing his dreams. He's not like you, obsessed with work." Even so, I kept telling myself that one day she would acknowledge me. But when I watched them casually open my closet and mock my treasured clothes as dull and tasteless, I finally woke up. To them, I was never family. And that party wasn't just a casual gathering. It was a celebration in advance. An invasion plan to create a fait accompli and seize my house while I was gone. What shocked me even more was what my mother said next. Before she comes back next month, I've already had contractors give me estimates to remodel the study upstairs into a kid's room. Blue walls would be nice. When she gets home, we'll just tell her, it's already decided. My fingertips were shaking with rage, yet my mind was eerily cold and clear. I opened a messaging app. It was a message to someone I had been secretly coordinating with for the past 2 weeks, ever since this trip was scheduled. Everything is going according to plan. No, we've had more harvest than expected. As I calmly watched the crimes unfolding on the screen, I began the countdown to my counterattack. Moreover, my mother's outrageous behavior didn't stop at turning my living room into a party venue. When I switched camera feeds, I saw that she had broken into my home office. That room was where I kept important work documents and managed my personal financial records. With practiced ease, my mother opened each desk drawer one by one, rummaging through their contents. Oh my, she has this much saved? Then we can put it toward Daniel's new business. Honestly, living so lavishly all by herself. She used her smartphone to photograph bank statements and investment documents I had carelessly left behind. This was a blatant invasion of privacy, bordering on illegal access. She was completely possessed by a warped sense of control, convinced that what belongs to my daughter belongs to me. Then another camera captured a scene so shocking I was left speechless. Tiffany had entered my master bedroom and was opening the drawers of my dresser. What she pulled out was a small velvet box. Inside was a large diamond necklace, left to me years ago by my late grandmother, who had said, "Find your happiness through your own strength." Its appraised value was around $20,000, but to me it was priceless. Far more than money. It was the only tangible keepsake from the one person in this world who had loved me unconditionally. Tiffany held the necklace up to her neck and gazed at herself in the mirror, smiling dreamily. This is beautiful. Someone like Kelly, a work-obsessed career woman, doesn't suit something that shines like this. This is something I should wear, as the woman worthy of this house. Without the slightest hesitation, she tossed the necklace deep into her designer handbag. She was caught in the act of theft. At that moment, the word family vanished completely from my heart. The instant I discovered the footage in my hotel room, I sprang into action. I packed my bags, checked out, and headed straight for the airport. I caught the last flight, arranged a lawyer and a private investigator midair, and just 12 hours after the discovery, 1 full week earlier than the return date I had told my family, I arrived back at my home in California. In the taxi on the way from the airport, I checked my phone again. The party had grown even more out of control. Wine was being spilled over my highest-end bedding as my mother and the others laughed hysterically. They still hadn't realized it. They were standing on the edge of the biggest cliff of their lives. That the daughter they thought was completely obedient had transformed into a beast showing her fangs. On the flight, I spent the coldest, most calculating hours of my life. I saved every single recording of the looting unfolding on my screen while remotely configuring my home security system to prepare a silent police alert. I wasn't betraying my family. I was simply exterminating pests that were devouring my life. As I repeated that to myself, the guilt that had chained me for years, the need to be a good daughter, vanished as if it had never existed. I returned to California one day earlier than the date I had told my family. I got out of the taxi at the corner of my street and walked alone through the quiet, night-shrouded neighborhood. Only my house was blazing with gaudy lights like Christmas decorations, blasting wildly out-of-place dance music. I stopped in front of the door and took a deep breath. Then, quietly, I opened it. No one noticed the soft click of the smart lock disengaging. From the living room came loud music and familiar, vulgar laughter. "Oh, let's open another bottle of wine." It was Tiffany's voice. Around her neck sparkled the necklace she had stolen that day. My grandmother's. I walked forward, step by step, into the living room. Then I turned on all the lights. "Good evening, everyone. You seem to be having quite a good time in my house." As if in a movie scene, Time froze. Daniel, who had been sprawled arrogantly on the sofa, jumped to his feet. My mother, holding a wine glass, stared at me wide-eyed, as though she had seen a ghost. "Kelly? Why are you here? You weren't supposed to be back yet." Her voice was shaking. "My work wrapped up earlier than expected. But more importantly, Mom, who are these people? And what are they doing in my house without my permission?" I made sure my voice remained calm and icy. Tiffany hurriedly cut in. "Oh, Kelly, welcome back. Didn't your mom tell you? We were asked to look after the house while you were away. This party was just an early celebration for your promotion." "Look after the house? A celebration?" I let out a short, derisive laugh. "Tiffany, where did you get the necklace you're wearing? That's my grandmother's keepsake, locked away in the back of my dresser." I watched the color drain from her face. She instinctively clutched her neck. "Well, your mother lent it to me? Right, Mother?" My mother raised her voice desperately, trying to maintain appearances. "That's right. We're family. What's wrong with lending things to each other once in a while? Kelly, how could you say something like that in front of our guests? Hurry up, greet everyone properly, and bring more champagne." The same commanding tone as always. She still believed I was under her control. "A greeting? Refills? No, that won't be necessary." As I stepped aside, two men who had been standing behind me entered the living room with calm authority. "Who are you people? Kelly, what do you think you're doing bringing strangers into my house?" My mother screamed. Without changing their expressions, the men slid their business cards across the table. "Strangers is a bit offensive. I'm Owen, a lawyer representing Kelly. And this is Walker, a private investigator. We're here tonight to protect the Kelly you believed was completely obedient." A lawyer?" The color drained from Daniel's face. The person I had been messaging during my business trip was not one individual, but these two professionals I had hired specifically for this situation. One was Mr. Walker, a private investigator highly skilled at gathering evidence of trespassing and asset misuse. The other was Mr. Owen, a ruthless lawyer renowned for winning cases with merciless precision. I had signed contracts with both of them the very moment my instincts sounded the alarm, right after I handed my mother the spare key. Shall we reveal the trick? I turned on the massive 85-inch television in the living room and wirelessly connected my smartphone. Since everyone's already here, let's watch the highlight reel of today's party together. The screen lit up with footage from several nights earlier. In crystal clear 4K resolution, my mother, Susan, could be seen laughing loudly, saying, "Kelly does whatever I tell her." Tiffany appeared next, openly discussing her plan to force Kelly to trade the house for Daniel's apartment. And then, the exact moment Tiffany slipped the necklace into her bag, captured from a perfect angle. The guests began to murmur. "Wait, is this real? Trading someone's house without permission? Are they insane? So that necklace was stolen?" My mother and Tiffany stood frozen, unable to utter a word, but my offensive wasn't over yet. "This footage is being live-streamed on social media as we speak." I turned my phone toward them. Yes, I had pressed the live stream button just before entering the house. Among my followers were colleagues from my company, industry contacts, and, quite intentionally, several of Daniel's coworkers. The title read, "Surprise Return Home, What's Really Happening in My House." We currently have over 3,000 viewers. Daniel, it looks like your department manager is watching. He just commented, "I can't believe an employee I thought was hardworking is trying to take over his sister's home." Daniel's face contorted. "Stop it, Kelly. Turn it off. Delete it now," he screamed, lunging toward me. But Mr. Walker subdued him instantly, gripping him with arms like steel. "It's useless, Daniel. And it's not just the video that's been recorded." He tossed several documents at Daniel's feet. "What the hell is this?" "Your so-called success as an IT consultant. The massive investment deals you bragged about. All fabrications created to justify stealing your sister's house. Our investigation shows your company hasn't secured a single legitimate contract in its first year. Worse, you've been delinquent on your apartment's maintenance fees for 6 months. In other words, you weren't moving into this house as a successful man. You were trying to crawl into your sister's home because your life had collapsed. Daniel's knees began to shake. That's not true. I'm going to succeed. With this house, I'll look credible. Then I can land big contracts. So you plan to throw your sister out for that? I asked coldly. I mean, we're family. It's just a little help. A little? What you tried to do was strip your sister of her entire life and literally leave her homeless, behind her back. And you still want to call that family helping family? Daniel lost all strength, collapsing to the floor, his mouth opening and closing like a fish, unable to speak. Kelly, have you lost your mind? How could you expose your family like this? After everything I did to raise you? Have you forgotten that? My mother pointed at me with trembling fingers. Her eyes weren't filled with anger, but with terror. The terror of watching the control she had built over decades crumble before her. A debt of gratitude? I stepped closer, looming over her as she sank to the floor. Oh, I remember it perfectly. How you always put my brother first. How you used my tuition money to pay off his debts. And how you just told me to hand over this house, the one I nearly worked myself to death to earn, to his family. I remember every word, every single one. My mother turned her face away, but I didn't let her escape. Mom, you knew Daniel was behind on his apartment maintenance fees, didn't you? You didn't hesitate for even a second to sacrifice your daughter to save your son. Isn't that right? I looked at my mother with open contempt. Up until today, I was still hoping, somewhere deep down, for even a trace of love from you as my mother. But what you threw away in the trash in my study wasn't just the renovation estimates. It was the very last shred of mercy you had left for me. With a cold smile, I tapped my smartphone. Look, the viewer count has passed 5,000. The comment section is exploding. This mother is the textbook definition of toxic. Using your daughter's house to pay off your son's debts is scarier than modern horror movies. No, that's a lie. It has to be a lie. My mother collapsed weakly to the floor. So what if it is? That was when Tiffany spoke up. There was no trace of panic in her eyes, only a murky, defiant gleam as if she had decided to double down. Daniel's failures are all your fault. You built this ridiculous mansion all by yourself and flaunted it. That's why Daniel lost his confidence and couldn't focus on his work. You crushed your brother's pride. So handing over this house as an apology is the bare minimum of decency a family owes. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. We've been trapped in that tiny apartment living miserably while you get everything to yourself. We even prepared a return gift for you. The honor of being remembered as the woman who gave up her house to save her family. She had known about her husband's lies from the very beginning. Instead of stopping him, she chose to sustain their luxurious lifestyle by draining her sister-in-law's assets. To her, I was nothing more than a convenient wallet. Mr. Owen stepped forward and pulled several documents from his briefcase. Tiffany, according to the appraisal certificate, the necklace you placed in your bag is a top-grade diamond, valued at approximately $20,000. Concealing it without the owner's consent with the intent to claim ownership constitutes theft under criminal law. Additionally, unlawfully using the house key, inviting multiple individuals inside, and hosting a party qualifies as trespassing and property damage. A criminal case? This time, Tiffany's face froze completely. The crystal glass she had been holding, one of my favorites, slipped from her fingers and shattered across the velvet sofa, splashing wine everywhere. Oh, that glass was custom-made too, $500 per piece. Please add it to the compensation list, Mr. Owen, I stated calmly. Then I slammed another stack of papers onto the table. They were dozens of copies, each showing traces of someone practicing my signature. This is a draft of a property ownership transfer agreement that was being prepared behind my back. Tiffany, the hidden camera in my bedroom clearly recorded you practicing my signature for a so-called gift transfer. This isn't family entitlement. It's premeditated document forgery and attempted fraud. Yes, that's right. Your signature is easy. You've always written yes to anything your mother told you. I figured once the paperwork was ready, we could just talk you into it afterward. You were never going to resist us anyway. Right, Mother? That's what you said too. My mother hung her head in silence, but she didn't deny it. Tiffany, my mother, and Daniel. The three of them had conspired to dismantle my life and divide it up while I was away. That brutal truth was fully exposed. At that moment, red and blue lights began flashing through the windows. The police vehicles Owen had arranged in advance had arrived. Well then, the party is over. Everyone this way to the exit. Oh, and for the guests as well, we'll need to see your IDs. You'll be questioned as accomplices in unlawful entry. The partygoers rushed toward the door in panic, but officers were already blocking the entrance. Wait, we were just invited. Susan said it was her house and we could come freely. The guests began scrambling to shift blame. My mother stared blankly at the ceiling, her eyes hollow, listening to it all. As the officers entered the living room, Tiffany began screaming hysterically. I didn't do anything wrong. This was all my mother-in-law's idea. I just did what I was told. Tiffany, how could you say that? The mother and daughter-in-law turned on each other in a grotesque display. This was the true face of the so-called perfect family. The police searched Tiffany's bag and recovered my grandmother's necklace. She was caught red-handed. Her screams as she was handcuffed echoed emptily through the soaring atrium of my new house. The next day, despite having just returned from an overseas business trip, I was sitting in Owen's law office. Across from me sat Daniel, utterly exhausted, and my mother, temporarily released on bail. Tiffany was still in custody. Kelly, isn't this enough now? Tiffany is deeply remorseful, and we know we were wrong too. Please withdraw the charges. We're family, aren't we? This is so humiliating. I can't even walk outside knowing people are watching. Even then, my mother was worried about appearances. I slammed several documents onto the table. These are the materials proving the house swap plan you pushed forward while I was away. Not just contractor estimates, but even draft authorization forms where you attempted to forge my signature. I restored them from the trash bin in my study. These actions may also constitute attempted forgery of signed private documents. Owen added quietly. The unlawful house swap scheme you attempted to force through involved a power of lawyer forged by imitating Kelly's handwriting, as well as draft gift agreements. All of these have already been submitted to the police as evidence. Daniel, the delinquent status of your apartment fees is also highly compelling evidence establishing motive for this attempted illegal exchange. Kelly, please drop the charges. Daniel pleaded in a pathetic voice. My apartment is about to be foreclosed. If we're kicked out of here too, we'll have nowhere to go. Did you ever stop to think about that when you were trying to dump that foreclosed apartment on me and steal this house for yourselves? I asked icily. You too, Mom. You were perfectly willing to force your own daughter to live in an apartment on the brink of foreclosure, just to save your son. As if you were throwing me away like trash. My mother looked away, clutching her handkerchief with trembling fingers. Kelly, your brother is a sensitive child. If you'd just endured a little more, everyone could have been happy. That endurance was used up 20 years ago. I nodded to Owen. If you want me to withdraw the charges, there are 2 conditions. I looked my mother and brother straight in the eye. First, you will immediately pay $100,000 covering damages to my furniture and property, emotional distress, and the attempted theft of my necklace. $100,000? That's impossible, Daniel shouted. Then sell your car and all of Tiffany's luxury items. The apartment is already worthless. Second, you will agree to a permanent restraining order, no contact ever, and formalize it in a notarized agreement. If you so much as step onto my property or attempt to contact me even once, all criminal charges will be reinstated immediately. Please, don't be so cold. Kelly, you are always my proudest daughter. My mother tried to guilt-trip me with tears, but I knew her words were a lie. I was never her proud daughter. I was merely a resource she could be proud of using. Goodbye, Mom. The Kelly who lived by your commands died during that business trip. From now on, I'll live my life. For myself. In the end, they accepted every one of my conditions. Rumors spread through Daniel's workplace. He was removed from a key project and effectively demoted. Unable to endure the cold stares of his colleagues, he resigned a few months later under the guise of a personal decision. Tiffany received a suspended sentence after being convicted of theft and became locally infamous as the thief's wife. She was completely ostracized from the mommy group she once boasted about and eventually fled with Daniel and their children to a small apartment in the suburbs. And my mother. The very thing she feared most, the collapse of her public image, came to pass in the most absolute way. Clips from the live stream spread online and remained there, almost permanently. The word obedient became the chain that strangled her own reputation. Friends who once surrounded her drifted away, one by one, a few weeks later. I was sitting on a newly purchased sofa, sipping coffee in my quiet living room. Every lock in the house had been replaced with the latest biometric security system, and I had signed a special contract with a private security firm. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Owen. All settlements are complete. We've confirmed full payment from them. You're truly free now. I turned off my phone and gazed out at the California sunset beyond the window. The little girl who once trembled, constantly watching her mother's expression, was gone. This spacious house is no longer a place for others to seize. It has become my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe freely, as myself. The house is filled with a silence I had never known before, and with it, a quiet certainty of happiness. My newly built house becomes a true home, quiet, peaceful, and free of intruders.